Specialist of City Pacific Lawyers. Elizabeth also brings 20 plus years of first-rate legal skills, extensive business experience, a commitment to excellence, successful outcomes, and reaching resolutions for all her clients. Highly committed, focused on client relationships, and another lovely lady. Let's welcome Elizabeth Michaels. Yay!
Thank you. I'll just share my screen with you guys. Hopefully you can see that now. What I thought I would speak to you about today is just some of the hot topics that we've been seeing as we're coming out of lockdown, going back in, the types of issues that are really becoming prevalent with business owners, because this is the type of area that we work in. First thing is, many of you already know me, but this is a bit about my background, that I was originally from the United States. So I have a bit of an international perspective in terms of how business works. But I've been in Australia for more than 20 years. And my firm, our primary focus is on business, small business clients. And I have a specialization in business law, estate and succession planning, and property law. That's a bit about me, but more importantly, also to reinforce what Shay said, is here's my team. And look, you know, you're only as good as the team that you have surrounding you. That's Rebecca, who is just a new person who's come back on board. She was originally with me, worked for 3 years with me, went away, and now she's back, which is fantastic. And Nellie's already met her. Certainly, I think as a business owner, hiring and firing people is the biggest headache, I think, for business owners, and getting it right is really hard. So I endorse what Shay says about having a proper process involved. Our three focus areas are these: in the commercial law area, property and conveyancing, and estate and succession planning. Most of the people that we're doing this work for are also small business owners. So we tailor our service and our advice with that in mind. I'll quickly go through some of the topics that we've been seeing have been sort of hot topics as we've been through the COVID period. And you previously probably heard me present on this area, in the area of leasing disputes, because as you know, when we were in lockdown, a lot of businesses simply couldn't operate at all. So the government introduced certain rent relief provisions. So this is still a hot topic in that there are still many sort of disputes happening. What we're also finding is that, there's just a lot of leasing, because, if you drove around Melbourne during lockdown, there were a lot of for lease signs on shops, and there are leasing deals now being done. So we're getting involved with those. There's still disputes working their way through between landlord and tenant, with working out the various and complicated issues around the rent relief provisions, resolving those, negotiating them, having mediations where we can't resolve it immediately to try to get a quick resolution, ideally avoiding litigation if at all possible. And what we're also now seeing is that some of these vacant shops, the vendors are now wanting to sell them because maybe during the lockdown, it wasn't returning what they wanted, and so they're now looking to offload that, and new property investors are coming in the market. So again, this tends to be an area that's taking up a fair bit of our time. Also shattering something that Shay said is in the employment law area, JobKeeper is finishing. A lot of employers are mindful of this if they've had employees on JobKeeper. So they're now reassessing their workforce and potentially looking at making certain staff redundant now that they don't have the subsidy from the government to keep them afloat. Employment law is a regular area that comes across our desk because, of course, as a small business owner, it's something that naturally occurs. And the process of they say hire slow, fire quickly. It is true. However, what we often find is that employers who are trying to get rid of an employee that's not suitable, they often stuff it up. So it's a good idea to get advice on the process along the way, as what you can and can't do, so that you're following the proper procedures. You know, it's a heavily regulated area in terms of the national employment standards and all the rest of it. And oftentimes the substance of why somebody should be let go, you know, is there, but there's still a process that has to be followed, and it's the process that employers often fall down on. So it's something that we advise on, because it's very much a part of business and running a business. So that's our area. Another area that we're seeing as we're coming out of COVID is this debt management. Businesses are looking at their books and records and saying, oh, gee, this person still owes me a lot of money. How am I going to recover it? During the pandemic, the federal government passed some legislation which made it harder to recover debts. There's a common debt recovery tool which you can use to serve on a company, which is called a statutory demand. And this reference to the statute is the corporations law. And essentially it is a non-contested debt recovery procedure whereby if you serve this document on a company, if they haven't paid the debt within 21 days, then they're deemed insolvent, which means that causes all kinds of things to happen. You could, you know, somebody can apply to the court to wind you up. If you have bank debt in place, you're in effect in breach of your bank policy, the bank policy document. So it's an area you never want to go into if you're a company. But during the pandemic, the government passed legislations that said, okay, well, we're going to give companies who are in trouble 6 months to manage a statutory demand. Well, and and they also raised the limit. You can in normal times, you can serve a statutory demand on an uncontested debt for $2,000 and above dollars, and the company has to respond within 21 days. During the pandemic, the government goes, we don't want all these insolvencies to happen, so we're going to give people 6 months to respond to a statutory demand, and we're going to raise the amount of money that you can chase to, I believe it was $30,000. So you had to have a much more significant amount of debt, and you had to wait 6 months. So it was largely an ineffective tool. So what's now happening, because that all went out the window on the 31st of December, is people are looking at their accounts receivable ledger going, we better get some of this in. And that's a very common tool to use to get the debts in. So we're seeing this coming up in our practice. We had a bogus one. People do abuse it. And we had a bogus one served on a client, and we were successfully able to get that one. Basically, it's a tennis match. You batted it back across a court, and we hit it. We hit a forehand winner. One for you, Costa. But this is something that we're seeing a fair bit now that we're coming out of COVID. As things are coming back to normal, and people are managing their debts in the more normal way, as opposed to leaving them on the back burner. And finally, another area that we're still very busy in is the area of estate planning, because, you know, during COVID, I think the thing that it's all taught us is that we can't predict the future. Everything that seems to be, very unpredictable. But so get your affairs in order and keep them in order, especially with business owners. Obviously, if something happens to you and you've got a business, who's going to manage your business, or how is your family going to benefit from, the business that you've built up if you haven't made proper plans in place? So that's estate planning, whether that's for mom or dad, or for a business owner who has potentially, complicated structure. We get involved in all of it, from family trust to self-managed super and everything in between. But also people who have relationships with their fellow business owners, and that's in the area of shareholder agreements. I've put the most popular blended family photo there because in our practice in the wills and estates area, blended families are the most challenging to advise on, and so and they're never as harmonious as the Brady Bunch actually was. In fact, the Brady Bunch is very much a work of fiction. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Just ending up with a little Friday funny. I don't know if any of you saw this. This was very viral on all the social media lawyer sites that I go to during the week. Did anyone see this? This was a court. We do a lot of our appearances in court or conciliations via Zoom or Teams meetings. And this photo here is a court hearing going on in Texas. And the guy in the lower right-hand corner is the judge, but he looks like he's in like a coat closet somewhere. But obviously the kitty cat is one of the other lawyers appearing at the hearing with a cat video filter. And it was the funniest thing because the cat's talking and he goes, "Judge, I'm not a cat." And he goes, "Oh, I can see you're not a cat." And it's like, well, actually he looks like a cat to me. Anyway, I don't know how the other lawyer kept a straight face during the recording. But the funny thing is, if you read the fine print, which we as lawyers are trained to read, it says anybody recording this hearing is could be in contempt of court and resulting in a fine of up to $500 or a jail term of 180 days. And yet this video was viral last week. So anyway, we've all done a lot of more Zoom hearings and conferences and whatever. So it was quite apt last week. So anyway, I could have put myself on as a kitty cat today. That could have been quite fun.